Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first ever Solo Rush Soccer Show. Tonight, along with me, we have Frank Tricomi, also part of the Richmond Town Rush coaching staff. So, Frank, finally, we get to show the audience and talk about our soccer team and basically how we started from day one to, I guess, this point. So I guess we could start with how you got involved with soccer.
Okay. Basically, what happened was I just decided to enroll my daughter Marie into a soccer club. I called a few clubs. The two that stick out in my mind right now are obviously Richmond Town and St. Rita's. While I was they actually both called me back on the same day. I was in the pool with my kids when St. Rita's is called. My wife took a message, and I said, okay, I'll call them back tomorrow. It's too late. The school's probably closed at this point on a summer afternoon in late July. And then I sit down to eat dinner that very night, and I get a call from Bill Smith from Richmond Town.
And let's just let the audience know Bill Smith is the president of Richmond Town.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, and he made sure he told me that quite a few times over the phone and referenced what a top-notch club Richmond Town was because of that.
Right.
And he asked me if I was interested in bringing my daughter down to the camp, and I said I was, and that's basically how my daughter and myself got involved with the club. I liked it. I was impressed.
What was the deciding factor, Frank, for you choosing Richmond Town? What really made you decide to go with Richmond Town other than the other school?
Well, the main reason was Bill had actually sold me on how large the club was compared to other clubs. I believe Richmond Town is the largest soccer club on Staten Island,
right?
And he made sure he told me that quite a few times.
So that was a deciding factor, being that Richmond Town is the biggest club on Staten Island.
That and the fact that I got to tell you, I think we were on the phone for close to an hour.
Oh, okay.
Just talking. I had so many questions at that point because this was my first child that I was trying to bring a recreational activity to. Okay. Actually, a sport, I should say. I should correct myself.
All right, that sounds good, Frank. I'm just going to give the audience a little bit of background on myself on how I got started with Richmond Town. We were actually, myself and my daughter Gabriella, she was playing for St. Charles. I believe it was the spring of '09. And she had just finished up camp with St. Charles, and I didn't want to get into details and all that stuff, but it didn't work out where we didn't end up getting a team with St. Charles. So one day I walked into a sporting store just for kicks. I believe I seen a flyer. They had a flyer in there, and it was a Richmond Town soccer camp flyer. So I just gave it a shot. I called the same person that you spoke to, which was Bill Smith. I asked him if he had a team available for Gabriella's age, which was 5, and also if there was a coaching spot available. And he had said to me, you know what, I do. I have a team right now. It's all set up with no coach. And I felt like I hit the lotto that day. I tell you, I was like, you know what, perfect. I'll take the team. The team is mine. So to make a long story short, we exchanged information. He sent me an email with the roster, got all the names of the parents, and made my phone calls. I believe it was real close to the start of the season, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a couple of weeks.
Yeah, actually, I think it might have been a couple of days.
Maybe, okay.
Because actually what happened was I believe that you had called me the day before school started. I believe it was a Tuesday.
Yeah, it was real late.
And you had called me, and ironically enough, I was on my way to Just for Kicks to pick up Marie's cleats and shin guards. And I think I had mentioned that to you, and you said, hey, I'm Coach John. I'm calling to let you know that the first practice is going to be tomorrow.
Right, and you know, as how we do things now. I mean, to start practicing 2 days before, 3 days before a season is definitely not what we're doing now.
Yes,
because we will get into it, but we start training at least 6 weeks before a season starts. But we'll get into that as the shows go on. We like to start from the beginning here.
And funny enough, I just wanted to also point out that during that camp that I had sent Marie to. Right. I had only made, I believe, 2 sessions of that camp, and by the second session, I was probably this close to going over to Bill Smith and telling Bill, hey, you got a team for me? And just the fact that I didn't have that much experience with soccer beforehand, I hesitated a little bit, and I think the reason that I hesitated was because I guess that this was meant to be. Otherwise, we might have been rivals.
Yeah, I mean,
because who knows what would have been. We might not have been sitting here right now.
I think it ended up being like I would call it like a dream season. Because the girls were great even that first year, and they were only 5 years old.
Yes,
we'll get into that. We'll get into that as the show goes on. But we got going right away as soon as I got in touch with Bill Smith. He like I said, sent me over the email with the roster. So I'm making my calls, and I think we had about 13 kids. I think we had 13
I think we
16.
may have even had more. I think we had about 16.
Yeah, you're right. We did have about 16. A couple of them were disinterested for whatever reason. You're always going to get that, a kid here and there that might want to drop off and not really interested in playing the game. So we make the phone calls. We get practice going right away because we have a game coming up within days. And, of course, I don't know anybody on the team. I'm there. I was basically on my own.
Yeah.
Until I got to know a couple of the parents and yourself.
We had actually you squeezed in 2 practices though before that first game.
Yeah.
If I remember right. Let me just point out that I missed the second practice because there was a little bit of a rain, and I pulled into the parking lot. I said, it's raining. Let me not even go over. I made a U-turn, and you have since reminded me that it's going to be an all-weather sport, and a little bit of rain or even a downpour isn't going to stop us.
Well, let's just let the audience know. For those that don't really know, soccer's played in the rain. It's also played in snow at some points, but they don't like to really do it with the snow with the younger children. But rain, yes. Now, of course, if there's any kind of thunder or lightning, the game practices, whatever the case is stopped immediately. We don't want anyone getting hurt. So that from experience. But like I said, thunder, lightning, absolutely get out of there. So we'll pick it up as far as I'll give a little background to myself for the audience that don't know. I've been playing soccer since I would say 5, 6 years old myself. I have a passion for the game. This is part of the reason why this show, I came up with this show. I wanted to be out there, let this team get some exposure, get soccer some exposure. I have a passion for the game. I love teaching it. I've played it the same way I teach the game. As you're going to see some photos of some of the passion later on in the show. Just want to be able to teach the game now that I can't play it any longer. So that being said, now we'll just go on and we'll pick up from where we began back in the fall of 2009. Frank, what do you recall? Now, you had just mentioned that we had 2 practices before our first game, which was in September. It was actually September 13th, 2009. We had 2 practices prior to our first game, which was against the OLQP Cardinals.
Yes.
Can you tell the audience about what you recall from that game? I mean, what was your first experience, actually, Frank? Your first, experience, after our first couple of practices? What'd you think?
Well, let me back up. At the first practice, I was actually late, and I was kind of clueless as to what was going on.
Right.
I know we walked in late. We saw Maria in, and we got going. And then, like I said, the second practice, I thought was going to get rained out. I went all the way to the field. My daughter had fell asleep. It was raining, so I made a U-turn, and I went back home. And I remember telling you that the next morning, and like I said before, you had told me that, look, we're going to play in weather like that. And then I remember, like, the first game, I remember getting going real fast.
Yeah.
You know, for a team that only had 2 practices, if my memory serves me right, I think we were up by a goal within the first 5 minutes of the game.
Right.
And you could tell that some players on this team really had something special from day one.
Yeah, I mean, from all my experiences, you know, playing soccer, watching the whole, you know, soccer. I watched soccer. I go back to the Cosmo days. But, yeah, you could tell right off the bat. Like, I didn't know much about any of the kids. Haven't seen them before. But, yes, you could tell right off the bat if, you know, if there's somebody with some sort of talent. But going back to the first game of the season was on September 13, 2009. Now, that's coming off of just getting the team, you know, just inheriting the team within a few days before that. So, yeah, as far as the score of the first game, I have the scores. Yeah, I've kept track of every game that we played, only because, you know, I like to go back, you know, maybe when it's all said and done, go back and, you know, just go over our accomplishments. So the first game, Frank, we end up winning by a score of 3-2. And I don't have the 3 goal scorers for whatever reason. I didn't keep track. But I know that Gabriella did score 1 goal in that game. But we ended up winning. And so we got off to a good start. You know, winning is always a good thing, you know. I mean, you know, just the kids, like coaches, parents, everyone has a good feeling, I guess, when you're winning. So after week 1 in the 2009 season, we're 1-0.
Yes.
Okay. Now we could fast forward a little bit and go on to our next game was on September 20th. Of course, we had practice during that week. If I'm not mistaken, we must have had 2 practices.
Yeah, at the time, I think we were doing Wednesday evening and sometime on Saturday.
So Wednesday, Saturday. Okay. We had 2 So basically, we started off, I mean, I don't believe in one practice because of the fact that if, say, you practice on a Wednesday and you're playing games on Sunday, I don't think the kids are going to remember much. Especially, don't forget, we were starting off with 5-year-olds.
Yes.
So so I believe, you know, you have to have at least 2 practices per week.
And let me just point out that that Wednesday's practice, I think, was when I got involved to be, I guess I'll say, at first I was just going to be, I guess, considered a helper. And because I remember going up to you and saying, hey, Coach John, you know, I see you by yourself today. If you need anybody to retrieve any balls or if I could do anything to help you out.
Yes.
And you had told me that any help was welcome.
Right.
I remember helping you that day. I remember helping on the Saturday practice. And I think by Saturday night, I had actually put my name in to be the assistant coach for the Rush. So my history with the Rush as far as being a coach came between games 1
Game 1 and 2. 1 and 2. Like, okay.
To finish up on what we said earlier, because I know you had asked me when I joined, but my daughter's start date was obviously different than
yeah, she started with the team.
Coach.
Right, she started with the team. But I thank you for that. We'll put that on record here. You know, I want to thank you for wanting to help out, and you do a good job with that.
It's been a pleasure. It's been.
You really do. Frank does a lot of work. I would say like behind the scenes maybe also. He's on the field, but I'm on the phone with Frank maybe during the season. It's actually become now, because we'll get into it on the next show. But during the season, I mean, we're always in contact constantly, and Frank does a lot of work behind the scenes with administrative work and paperwork and emailing and stuff like that. So, and of course, the help that he does on the field. So, okay, that being said, let's go right to game. We had 2 practices, so we win our first game. We don't know the team. I don't know anybody. You know, everyone's pretty much like, oh, who's this guy, and all that kind of good stuff. And I'm like, who are they? Okay. So we put this team onto the field, 16 kids, and we played against the Cardinals. We beat them 3-2, and I'm like, feeling good, right? We have 2 practices. We go to week number 2, which is September 20th, 2009, and Richmond Town Rush versus St. Dorothy's Honeybees, which they turn out to be one of our rivals right now. But we won't get into that right now, right, Frankie?
We didn't know that. We didn't know it at the time.
So, okay, make another long story. It was just shorten it down a little bit. The result in that game was another Richmond Town Rush win, 2-1 against the St. Dorothy's Honeybee. Okay, so I'm sure at that point, after 2 weeks of really not knowing much about the team, and we're just starting to learn, we're 2-0, and I know I was feeling good about that. I'm sure you were, and I'm sure the team was also feeling fine about that. So we go on to week number 3, which ends up being, what happens here was we were rained out on the 27th, so we actually had 2 weeks in between games. So we got a rain out. I'm sure we had more practice time. As far as the way I do things, I mean, if we get rained out, that's fine. We'll continue. We don't have a game that particular week, we'll still practice. Okay, I don't believe in, because we don't have a game on a Sunday, that we're going to have a whole week off practice. I don't believe in that. Okay, we'll still, even if we have a bye week or if it's a rain out, we'll continue to practice just to make the team stronger. Okay, so we have that 2-week span, and I'm sure I'm pulling the hair out of my head, because I can't wait to get back. You know, we got this team. We're 2-0, and, you know, I can't wait to get back on the field and play another game. So now we're going to fast forward to October 4th as our 3rd game. Just looking at the score of this game, it's definitely not what I thought, because like I said, 2 games, 2 results, 2 wins. I'm sure we had some good practice times. And then we get into the 3rd game, which is the Richmond Town Rush versus the OLGC Blue Blazers. And they basically blazed us that game. I don't know. Can't really explain it sometimes. You know, there's, I guess, preparation. Maybe other teams are just ready. You know, I probably, you know, I guess it comes down on the coaches. If your team is not ready, it's definitely the coach's fault. So for whatever the case is, they beat us 3-0 for that game, and I'm sure, I can guarantee that after that loss, I wasn't happy, and we were going back to the drawing board.
Yeah, I remember after that loss, just kind of feeling that, you know, were we really as good as we were after the first 2 games, or did we just kind of run into a few teams that weren't? You start to question, you know, at that point it's only game 3, about how good the team is and how much work you need to do.
Right, exactly. So that's fine. That being said, we're back to the drawing board. It feels like we're, you know, right back to the start, because once you get shellacked like that, I mean, 3-0 is 3-0. In soccer, it's pretty much a shellacking. And you know, we're back to practice. Okay, that following week we have 2 more practices. Now we're back to game day, which is on October 18th. I see we have a Columbus Day holiday.
Yes.
So I'm sure I'm pulling the hair out of my head again, because that's 2 weeks again. Okay, so we have a 2-week span. Now we're coming off a loss. Okay, so that's even worse than coming off a win and having a rain out. So we're coming off a loss, and we have a holiday weekend, which we don't play. Then add insult to injury, we have a rain out. So you got 3 weeks now of no soccer coming off a loss. Okay, So let's fast forward to October 25th now. Richmond Town Rush. I'm sure we've had at least 6 practices. You figure 2 a week.
Yes.
Okay, up until this game leading up to October 25th. Now, it's a rematch versus the OLQP Cardinals and the Richmond Town Rush. Okay, judging by the score of that game, I think not only myself but the team let out some kind of frustration after being shellacked 3-0 and the long layoff, because the score of that game was the Richmond Town Rush 8 and the Cardinals 1.
I think a lot of that had to do with, as well as the pasting, like you said, we took at the hands of the Blue Blazers. I think a lot of that had to do with, as well, the fact that we beat them by 7 or 8 goals more than we did the first time that we played them on the first game. I think a lot of that was when we started to realize that the talent on the team, as well as the practicing, because most teams only practice once a week.
Yeah, most
of the team. If you talk to a lot, we're lucky enough to get 2, sometimes 3. Yeah. And I think at that point, I think that's when we started realizing that, hey, this is working. All these practices are working, and this team is clicking.
Okay, so it looks like after this game, I would imagine that it's starting to look like we might have something brewing here. Okay, that's how I would put it. We might have a good group of girls. Okay, so that being said, after week number 4, okay, we have 2 more practices, and then we'll go to November 1st. Okay, we'll have a game versus St. Charles, which was a team that Gabrielle and I originally had planned to be on. But okay, that ends up being another Richmond Town Rush victory. 3 goals for the Rush and 1 for St. Charles. And I might add, Gabriella scored 3 goals in that game. I mean, you could say what you want. I mean, it didn't work out with St. Charles and myself. And then we played the first game, and Gabriella scores 3 goals on them. I mean,
Boy, what were they missing? What are they missing?
They're missing Gabriella. But you know what? I'm glad that it worked out the way it did work out, because I don't think I'd be I'm happy. I'm ecstatic, actually, with the way things are going right now. Okay, so now our record goes from, we are now 4-1. Okay, we beat St. Charles 3-1. Gabriella gets the hat trick, the natural hat trick. Okay, we could fast forward. Ends up being that the schedule makers, I guess, put us back-to-back weeks. We played St. Charles, and the result once again was the same. It was a victory for Richmond Town. This time it was 2-0. It was a shutout. So let's move on to our last regular season game versus the OLQP Mermaids. And once again, Richmond Town Rush comes out on top, and that game was a 1-0 victory, and Gabriella being the sole goal scorer in that game. And now what we do also is we have this annual game, Frank, that we go over to Brooklyn, and we play the Brooklyn Federation. They're called the FAIO, F-A-I-O. And what they do is we come down after our season is over, and we play their All-Stars. So basically, it's our team traveling over to Brooklyn, and we play against a team that's made up of their best players. And what we did in December of 2009 was our first meeting against them, and we actually beat them 1-0 for the first game ever played in Brooklyn. So, that being said, that was a 1-0 Isabella scored that goal, which was actually Belle. She's the only goal scorer. Our goalie for that particular game was Paulie Fazio. And to wrap up that season, we were 7-1. And I tell you, Frank, for inhibiting a team that we knew nothing about, and like with no real practice time to start the season off with, I mean that speaks volumes. And these girls, they did an excellent job as far as soaking in what we were teaching them.
Yes, I think they did. I think also, at times it felt like at the beginning, we weren't sure exactly where each girl felt comfortable playing, what their strengths were, what their weaknesses were. So at the beginning, it was kind of just chance,
right?
And the two things that I remember about this season the most are obviously Gabriella being the breakout star.
Speaking of Gabriella, Frank, because we only have 3 minutes left, I think we have Gabriella here today in the studio. If Gabriella is out there somewhere, can you come on in? Because we only have about a minute left. How are you, Gabriella?
Good.
Okay. Do you want to tell the audience what your position is and how you feel about soccer?
Okay, that's easy. I feel great about soccer.
What position do you play?
Oh, I forgot. I play forward.
You play forward. Okay. Do you like playing forward?
Yes.
Do you like playing like any other position? Maybe do you like playing goalkeeper one day, or do you just like forward?
I don't like playing goalkeeper because like you have to wait for the ball. You have to stand there doing nothing.
Well,
until the ball comes through, because they're defeating the ball. Right. So they're trying to get the ball together. Like, here they are.
And our defense is very good.
Yeah.
Okay,
so I have to wait there.
But you do realize, and I'm sure you will as you get older, that your dad was a goaltender. And
yes, you already told me.
Goalies are a very important position on the field. Okay, you know what? That music is a sign that our first show, it definitely went by quick, but stay tuned. We will definitely be broadcasting.
And we love to have other musicals.
We will be broadcasting. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm John Contaduca. This has been Solo Rush.
Bye. See you next time. I hope you enjoyed the show.